Nothing ever takes away that heart-wrenching, you want your children to be happy and you want to do the best for your kids. It's always a really difficult position for parents to be in because you just want to take it away, really, and you want them to be happy.
Hello everybody, and a big warm welcome to Anxiety Uncovered, the podcast that inspires young people to manage anxiety and for the adults who want to empower them to succeed. I'm Joe Roundtree, stand-up comedian, presenter, and now anxiety specialist for young people. 15 years ago, I was mugged on the streets of Barcelona, an experience that left me battling chronic anxiety, PTSD and OCD for many years. I eventually reached out, and thanks to the incredible support from family, friends, and the amazing team at the Maudsley Hospital Centre for Anxiety, extensive therapy, and my background in psychology, I found a way through it. Now, I'm here to help you do the same. So come and join the conversation, have a listen, a laugh, and learn everything you need to know to transform your anxiety into your biggest strength. I'll see you inside. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Anxiety Uncovered. Whether you're a first-time listener or tuning in from somewhere around the globe, hello, hola, namaste. Today we're exploring groundbreaking research that could change the way we help our teenagers with anxiety and depression. It's part of the nationwide Attend study. Information in the show notes, all about how you can potentially get involved. Testing whether mindfulness can help young people and their families break the cycle of mental health struggles. Now, before you switch off, and I know a few of you already have, because you're thinking, oh, here we go. It's that mindfulness again, yakety, 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 blah-diddy, blah-diddy, blah. Hear me out, right? Because this isn't about just a load of bald people sitting cross-legged in the lotus position, in baggy robes, humming, ringing bells and messing around with wind chimes. It's not about that. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with that either. I love a baggy robe. Mindfulness, personally, it's not a great word to describe what it is. It needs a rebrand. Mindfulness is a science-backed mind training tool. That's such a better word for it. Mind training. If it was called that, then I think it would be a lot more appealing. And I think young people especially would find it a bit more accessible. Mind training, the same kind of techniques used by Olympic athletes, the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, and England's penalty takers. Now, I just want to say that the women have got this sorted. Congratulations, ladies, on double Euro victory. Chloe Kelly, can I just say, her mantra and routine before she kicks that penalty, absolute liquid gold. I could watch it all day. That little ball twirl, the hop, the skip, the jump, and that little knee skip. Absolutely brilliant. But when it comes to the men, let's face it, historically we are useless. Except at Euro 2024. Do you remember that? The men's team nailed all 5 penalties against Switzerland in the quarter-final. The secret? They worked with a breath coach using mindfulness, aka mind training, to manage stress and sharpen focus under pressure. So if it works for elite athletes under ridiculous amounts of pressure, imagine what it could do for you. So if you're a parent listening to this and thinking, I just wish there was something out there that could help both me and my teenager, or maybe you're a young person listening who's tried therapy, tried other stuff, but you're still struggling and you're still searching for answers, this could be exactly what you've all been looking for. Ever felt like anxiety and depression are just following you around? Like you try one thing, it helps for a bit, then boom, you're back exactly where you first started. I know what it feels like to be stuck in that loop, not just for days, but for weeks, months, and years. After my own struggles, a question I kept asking myself was why? Why do some people just get better and stay better, while others just keep cycling through the same old problems? That's exactly the question my guests today are tackling. You'll meet Jerry, a research therapist with 30 plus years in child mental health, designing mindfulness programs. Kat, a psychology student who actually went through the program as a teenager, now helping design it. And Rachel, an academic researcher and mum of 4 studying what really helps young people. They'll share how MAC, which stands for Mindfulness for Adolescents and Carers, actually works. We'll explore what the research is showing so far, how you and your teenager can get involved in the study for free and get paid for it. And stick around right till the end for a very powerful top takeaway of the week from my anxiety busting toolkit. You don't want to miss it. So, what is the actual Attend study all about, and what's the aim of the study?
So the Attend study, it's a package of 5 different streams of work, is the whole Attend study. But the bit that's probably the most interesting to talk about right now is what we call a randomized controlled trial. They've been working on adapting a form of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for use with young people. And that adaptation has been going on for about 10 years. So for those of you that don't know, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is used with adults a lot. And it has been used with adults for quite a long time now to help with depressive thoughts. And it's got good results with adults. So we wanted to see, can we, rather than waiting till someone's become an adult and has experienced lots of different episodes of depression, can we get in there a bit earlier and do something that might prevent them having to be in that situation? So we started, and Jerry was one of the first people that started this with a couple of other therapists in London. We started adapting what was happening for the adults and making it a bit more teenager friendly. And we also wanted to include the parents as well. So we did that predominantly because one of the things that we know helps with mindfulness is that if you practice mindfulness more regularly, you tend to get a better response in terms of how it helps you with your mental health. And we also knew that teenagers found that really difficult. So we initially thought, let's bring the parents along. We'll tell them what we're doing with the young people, completely separate group, but we'll tell them what we're doing with the young people, and they can help support practice at home. What we really quickly learned, and we should have thought of this beforehand, but what we really quickly learned is that most of the parents themselves were also struggling with their mental health. So we know anxiety and depression runs in families, but we also know that parenting a child who's got mental health problems is stress-inducing too. So it's ended up with this thing that we're actually hoping will have benefits for both the young people and the parents. And we've been adapting the treatment over the last decade. We've now got what we think is the optimum treatment. So it's called MAC, Mindfulness for Adolescents and Carers. It's an 8-week program where a group of young people meet for about an hour and a half a week, and their parents are invited to join a parent group for about an hour and a half a week as well. And they meet for 8 weeks. And it's what we call a skills-based program. So it's not about sitting down and talking about your feelings or what's happened this week. It's very much around, here are some techniques, here are some tools that might help you. And what Attend is we're testing whether or not this new treatment is an effective way to manage adolescent mental health. So half of the people who take part will take part in the MAC group and half won't. And then we follow them up for the next 12 months. We ask them lots of questions. They're very great. They fill out so many surveys for us, but all of those surveys really help us understand what's changing for them. And one of the nice things about what we're doing in Attend is that every 2 weeks, we're asking young people to fill out a really short survey. So it's not just how are you feeling 4 months later and how are you feeling 12 months later. We're able to track people's progress throughout the year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, Jerry, when you're explaining MAC to skeptical parents or teenagers, how do you help them really understand why the group element is so crucial?
I think originally it was designed separately for the most of the program, simply so it would give a space for young people to actually join and create their community within the program, and likewise for parents also to have that opportunity to come together, because I think, as Rachel was saying earlier, often parents feel very much alone with this. They often blame themselves. They often feel that they're the only ones that are experiencing having a young person with mental health difficulties. So actually coming together with other parents is that real opportunity of seeing the universality of this experience. And this is exactly the same for young people too. They begin to understand that mental health is something, of course, that we all have, and all of us as human beings will experience moments where we become anxious, where we become sad. And this is what it is to be a human being. And when young people are in a group together, they get that opportunity to experience, yeah, so it's not just me. And just understanding that universality to this is also such a crucial kind of component to change, therapeutic change for young people and also for the parents. So yeah, it was kind of to create that space where young people could be together as parents and carers. And then, of course, at the beginning of the program, they start together. And then at the end of the program, they come back together and share what they've learned. And as Rachel said, what they've learned is a lot of skills, because this is very much a skills-based learning, and through experience, learning through experience, rather than just having somebody like myself standing at the front and telling you what to do. You're learning through experimenting and experience, and hopefully a lot of fun along the way as well.
Yeah, it reminds me, I think it was a Benjamin Franklin quote. He says, tell me I'll forget, teach me I may remember, but involve me, that's when I learn. So Kat, you went through the program. What were some of the challenges you faced, especially when it came to opening up to your parents about your mental health?
That what I found is that mental health can kind of cause a little bit of in a way, a chasm between you and your parents, because suddenly you're going through this and it kind of is like the elephant in the room, and you feel so different to other people and you feel like everyone can see it. And it kind of disrupts a very normal family unit, because there's suddenly an extra family member, which is your mental health in a way. In a way, I feel like a big part of the attention study that I thought was so important when I did it, even though it was different then because it was 10 years ago and it was a pilot study, a different sort of study, but it was the same sort of idea and core like fundamentals, is that it really helped me repair my relationship with my parents, because we were practicing mindfulness every day and I was talking to my parents about how unhappy I was and they were talking about how they were unhappy too. And then suddenly it was less weird what I was going through. And I think often there's a lot of a strange perception, I think, about teenagers, that you're kind of supposed to be a little bit moody, supposed to be a little bit depressed. And then when you actually confront it and you talk to it and you talk about it with your parents and it feels a little bit better and you're actually like, oh, this is a real thing. I'm not just going through the general upset of being 13, which is a terrible time, but also, mental health is slightly different to just the general terrible time of being 13. And, it makes you feel a little less alone. So, yeah.
Could you explain to us, Jerry, a bit about what MAC is and how this treatment is actually helping young people and their families, please?
Yeah, so MAC is a program that's underpinned. It's essentially a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy program. So it's a combination of a training in mindfulness meditation, and cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's a combination of those modalities to make mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And essentially, it's training young people to begin to become mindful. But for young people that are experiencing anxiety and low mood, and inevitably everybody's mind wanders, it gets distracted, it is pulled in this way or that way, the mind wanders off. But if there's some sadness or some stress, negative stress or anxiety in the mind body, when the mind wanders, it will tend to go into overthinking, maybe negative emotions and negative thoughts. And if it's leaning into the future and there's let's say negative emotion and thoughts, and it leans into thinking or distracted into the future, it will move more towards anxiety and catastrophizing. Oh, this is going to go wrong, I know it is. if there's negative emotions or negative thoughts and the mind tends to go into the past, it will start dwelling, oh, I should have done it this way. What will other people think of me? And that will move young people and adults, of course, into sadness. And the two things that connect this futuring, as in kind of feeling anxious about things in the future and maybe sadness about what has happened in the past, is the negative thoughts. It's either leaning into the future or the negative thoughts is leaning into the past. And as most of us experience, it kind of moves between these two spaces if there's kind of unhappiness or stress in the system. So Mac is really training this innate skill that we have about being mindful, which simply means being aware of what's happening right now. And it's training young people to begin to spot the mind wandering off into these worry thoughts or thoughts of sadness, being able to see that we have many, many thoughts every day, and beginning to notice when they wander into these overthinking thoughts about sadness or overthinking thoughts about worry, and beginning to learn to see these patterns of thinking and beginning to learn how to step back from them, not to take them personally and not to take these thoughts as facts. These are just thoughts. And as I said earlier, we have thousands of thoughts every day, but the thoughts that tend to stick to the mind and the thoughts that we tend to ruminate on or think about over and over and personalize are those ones that are negative. Negative thoughts, negative emotions tend to stick to the mind like Velcro. Quite the reverse, when we have maybe a pleasant thought, those kind of don't stick. They kind of a bit like oil hitting a Teflon frying pan. If you cook, it hits the pan and it just rolls off really quickly.
Yeah.
We don't spend much time with them. We don't savor those pleasant thoughts and feelings, but the ones that stick and the ones that we begin to think over and over, and all we're doing there is trying to think about these negative thoughts and emotions. All young people are looking to do is to try and solve them, to try and problem solve them, because thinking works fantastically for pretty much anything that we come across in our lives. But one thing that thinking about doesn't seem to be as effective is thinking about negative emotions and negative thoughts. It tends to take us into a spiral. So when we come to think about them, all we're trying to do is solve them, problem solve them, to feel better, really. There's nothing wrong with that. We just want to feel better. But the more we think about these negative thoughts and the negative emotions, they intensify, and then they begin to spiral. So this is what we're kind of about really with Mac, is we're beginning to learn skills about spotting these patterns and beginning to step back from these thoughts and emotions and to not take them as facts, not to take them personally.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. I mean, I've written about 10 different things down there. So which question do I ask first? I came across something recently where anxiety is the price that we humans pay for having the ability to be able to think of future and think of past, which I thought was a great way of, sort of seeing it. It's almost like, it's a superpower, but if you misuse the superpower, it can be, tragic and it can go wrong. And, I think anxiety is sort of looks like a misuse of the imagination, but also you can actually use your imagination to do some amazing things. Would you say that future-based thinking is more anxiety and maybe reminiscing about the past, sadness is more depression?
Yeah, I'd like, just coming off what you're saying, speaking about Joe, in terms of the capacity to be able to think is, I think, as you're saying, is just such a fantastic skill. Being able to, like for you, kind of being able to, you're talking about going on holiday a bit later, being able to plan that. And sometimes we talk about, if we plan a holiday in January, we're already getting an effect from it. Yeah, before we even go on the holiday. So we can really see the, the real the importance of being able to plan, but also the pleasure in being able to think about things in the future, and also to be able to reflect on things that we've really enjoyed in the past. Thinking back on memories that we have brings huge amount of pleasure. It brings us happiness. So the whole thing about thinking and reflecting, whether it's into the future or in the past, is just a great human asset. Yeah, then where we've got to bring mindfulness is in knowing where our thoughts are. So I know that I'm thinking about the future, and that's really helpful because it's helping me to plan. It's helping me to feel already excited about going on my holiday. It's bringing me something that's constructive, it's helpful, it's supporting me, whether I'm thinking about the future or I'm thinking about the past. So I'm mindful of where my mind is. And then equally is being mindful of when the mind is thinking about the future, but the mind body is stressed. And there's a sadness in the body. There's a negative emotion. There's a negative thought. And if I begin to think into the future out of these negative states of mind, body, then I will begin to overthink it. And as I begin to overthink it, to try and feel better, to try and solve it, I will begin to think myself further and further into it. But if I'm mindful of where my mind is, I will know that I'm beginning to spiral into rumination. So you can see this skill, this capacity we have of being mindful of where the mind is really helpful, because then we know whether it's a mind that's supporting us, or whether our mind is in a state which is beginning to undermine us.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of confusion about the definition of mindfulness, because the word itself suggests that you're full of mind, but actually it's about being there with your thoughts, allowing them to be there, just allowing them to move in front of you like clouds, or however you want to view it, and just being okay with them being there. We have a brain that feeds up, from my research, 80% negative thoughts because of the negativity bias. 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. So this isn't about pushing the thoughts away or not allowing them to be there. It's like, yeah, I'm going to think negatively because I'm essentially an animal designed to survive. And yeah, there's going to be that sense of danger and, what's out there. But actually just going, yeah, I'm fine with them just, moving across without me attaching necessarily any emotion to them.
Yeah, it's that over personalization of thinking and emotion that really takes us down those loops. I've got a very good analogy that one young person told me, probably around the time then a cat was in the groups, and she would so she experienced I think predominantly anxious thoughts. So she would say that what she was aware of was that one negative thought would come into the mind like this. And then what she would notice is the mind would go towards that negative thought that's come into the mind to begin to think about it, to basically problem solve it, or to feel better, or just to get rid of it. She would then begin to think about that thought. And then before she knew it, another thought would pop up. The thought might, why do I feel this way? What will other people think of me? These kind of thoughts. And then she would attempt to try and think about them. And then another thought would come up. And then she'd think about that thought. And it would just end up a multiple of these negative thoughts as she begins to think about each one. And before she knew it, she said she was like in a spider's web of overthinking. And this is what we're becoming mindful of, these patterns of thinking about negative thoughts and emotions, which leads to this spider webbing effect of overthinking and rumination. And so that we can see this thought come into the mind. Here we go. That's that repetitive, automatic thought that you were talking about, Joe, just a moment ago. And I can see my mind just getting drawn towards thinking about this. Oh, and then I can see another one come up. And then, of course, I get emotional feedback now because my heart rate's gone up. My tummy's feeling sick. that then intensifies these thoughts. And then the mind says, look, these must be right. There's something wrong. I feel terrible. I must keep thinking about these thoughts. And then I just end up into this web of overthinking. So with the Mac, we're learning to see these patterns and beginning to just, as you said earlier, step back and just see them. And what we know is these thoughts, though they're sticky, they will pass, they will move through. And particularly if we're beginning to learn not to personalize this thought as, oh, this thought is who I am as a person. Well, I'm much more than that. I do loads of other things. I'm not just that thought, but we can get very much caught in, oh, that thought is who I am, because it also carries a lot of emotion with it. So it's very sticky. So we end up thinking, gosh, this is the world, isn't it? Just this thought and emotion. But when we step back, we can see that the world is a much bigger place that we occupy with activities, friends, and so on. But these are very sticky things that we can get drawn into.
Yeah, I think that is going to help a lot of people. It was almost like your instruction manual for the brain and mindfulness. And I think back that, no one ever teaches us about what you just taught us just there. No one teaches you about the inner workings of the brain and why we think the way we think. It's like I got an 8-page instruction manual about how to put batteries in my kids' walkie-talkies of a day. But when it comes to being a human being, it's like, just get on with it. Go, best of luck. And that's what I think all these conversations are doing. It's just getting a bit more knowledge out there. So Jerry, you were talking about this spider's web, so you've got one thought that comes in, then it builds and then it builds. And then suddenly you get this web. I really related to that because I was in that, and it took me years to be able to even step back from it and see that I was separate from that. And I actually joined the London School of Meditation when I was living there in Holland Park. And I would literally go and sit with all the elders there. I was the youngest person there. I was like 18. And I would just go and sit in a room in silence. And I'd say for the first couple of weeks, I was still in my head. I couldn't get out of it. But I stuck with it. I kept going back. And eventually I could see that there was separation from this anxiety in me. But when you're so close to it like that, and I remember it's so hard to just almost get that initial perspective on it. What would you say to someone who's relating to that? I'm in that web of despair. How do I take the first steps of seeing it for what it is?
Yeah, and kind of seeing it for what it is probably comes a little bit further into the program or the training. So the first steps in the training will be some psychoeducation like we've just talked about there. So we begin to understand mind, body, our thoughts, our feelings, our body sensations. Um, and then we're also looking at, and you probably remember this from your practice that you when you were practicing with the elders, Joe, the first step is kind of training. The mind wanders, the mind gets distracted very quickly, the mind's off within seconds. So the first step is kind of beginning to learn the attentional skills. So we're very deliberately grounding, supporting the practice of grounding the mind or redeploying the attention, disconnecting from the wandering thoughts, coming back to the breath, or disconnecting from the wandering thought that's just happened within 3 seconds and bringing it back to the feet, making contact with the ground. Or my mind wanders off again in 5 seconds and very deliberately bringing it maybe to sounds. But we don't move around those attentional points. We might begin with the body making contact with the surface that supports the body, a chair or the feet on the ground. And each time the mind wanders, we bring it back to the body making contact as an anchor with the surface that supports it. And then in another practice, when the mind wanders, because this happens automatically, it's not like we're thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to just go, I must let my mind wander today. The mind just pings off automatically, and it gets caught up in stuff very quickly. So as soon as we notice, and that's the mindfulness bit, as soon as we notice that the mind has wandered, That's where mindfulness begins, because we're now mindful of where the mind is. Oh, it's thinking about all that stuff. So as soon as we notice that, we then got the choice and the capacity through training to say, okay, I'm going to just let go of those wandering thoughts, and I'm going to bring my attention very deliberately back to the breath or the feet making contact with the ground. And there's also another component that we're kind of learning and training in the program, is that when we notice that the mind has wandered and it's got caught up in distracting thoughts, that's where mindfulness begins. And then as we redeploy the attention back to the breath, let's say, as the anchor point, the attitude that we bring to this, bringing it back to the anchor, is one of acceptance and kindness rather than judgment. Oh, hell, I'm a hopeless meditator. I can't do this. This is terrible. I've been doing it for 25 years and my mind still wanders. That's what minds do. They wander. Yeah. So it's kind of saying, here we go. I know this pattern. Let's okay, it's okay. Let's just gently bring this back. Just accept that the mind wanders. This is what minds do. They wander. Just accept that, rather than, I should be better than this. My mind should be empty. It should be fixed permanently on the breath. Well, that ain't gonna happen. Really, what it's about is simply noticing the mind wandering and just bringing it back. And the mind wandering is not separate to the practice. It's part of the practice. Mind wandering is part of the practice. It's noticing then that the mind has wandered and then bringing it back.
Yes. Yeah. I find it fascinating when I do the workshops. I have purposely bought some eye masks, and there's a part of the workshop where I get the students to sit and do a mindfulness based activity. And I used to do it without the eye masks, and it didn't work. It just fell on its backside, because they're all there just sort of looking at each other. I mean, being anxious and then doing mindfulness in front of a load of anxious people. I was like, Joe, what are you doing? So I was like, let's get some eye masks. So I got them all to basically turn their chairs to the wall. I said, no one's interested in you right now. You're just facing the wall. You've all got eye masks on, so no one can see each other. And we do this sort of guided meditation, mindfulness thing. And what was really nice off the back of it was teenagers saying that's the first time I've actually just sat with myself ever. That's the first time I've actually ever taken time out just to stop. And I was like, wow. But then, as adults, unless you actually do it and you make it as part of your daily practice, then when do we ever just sit with ourselves and stop and just realize what's going on? But on the other side of that, a lot of them, and you've been doing it, you say 25 years, and it still, your mind still wanders. A lot of them go, yeah, I've tried, it didn't work. I'm like, okay, well, first time you do anything, it doesn't work, and you're probably going to be a bit rubbish at it, but just stick with it. And like you say, come back to the breath. Are you finding that in over the 8 weeks, is there initial resistance and teenagers and adults go, no, it don't work for me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Why would they? Why wouldn't they? I think, everybody's going to enter this with a very skeptical mind. And in many ways, we encourage it. Really question this. Is it relevant? Does it actually work? Does it help? Really keep those questions all the way through. So that skepticism definitely has to be there, because what we're encouraging is our young people to be scientists, to actually observe what's happening with mind body, and to then question is this particular practice or this method, is it helping me to feel better? Am I actually understanding more about the mind? So yeah, keep that question. So the skepticism absolutely is there all the way through. But I think, as you said, through the experience, most people that go through the program really begin to see the relevance of the practice and the skills. Not necessarily, obviously, the group setting itself is like a laboratory. That's where we're really testing out stuff and training the skills. We're really giving it a really good go all together there, testing it all out. And then the critical point is then being able to transfer that into everyday life.
Yeah.
So for young people, I wouldn't be expecting young people to be sat there out there on a cushion meditating for 30 minutes. What I would be most interested in is how they could take some of the principles and the processes and the skills that they've learned in the MAC program into their everyday life, into their everyday interactions with their friends, with their parents, with their families, with their carers. Taking these understanding of being mindful and being aware of what's happening right now into maybe their sport, maybe their gaming on computers, maybe with creativity and art, bringing it into everyday life. Because if you can bring mindfulness into the stuff that is important to you, you're just going to be living that more fully. So when you're listening to a piece of music on one of your favorite streaming sites, instead of as soon as that track, as soon as the first few notes hits your mind through your ears, then your mind automatically wanders off and you're thinking about something in the future or in the past. With your mindfulness practice, you'll be, minds began to wander now. I'm going to come back to actually hearing the music I actually want to listen to and listening to the music that I actually enjoy, that brings me pleasure to my mind body. So it's about transferring the skills and practices and the principles and the understanding of this approach into your everyday life. And that means to say you're going to probably, if it's helpful, you're probably going to continue on with it till you're an old person.
Yeah, it doesn't stop, does it? I mean,
No.
yeah. So, for example, what you just said then, a lot of these young people I'm speaking to are saying, they get so worried of just walking into a classroom and just, going, oh, everyone's looking at me, everyone's staring at me, what they're thinking about me. So, say, for example, a teenager is late for class, they walk into a classroom and they've got literally 60 eyes all staring at them. I mean, the thought of, they're all looking at me is true because they are. But all the other thoughts that come with it, like you were saying, there's a thought and then dong, 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 dong. They're probably looking at my hair. They probably think I'm ugly. They probably think I'm stupid. They're probably thinking, why are you late? I probably got something down my top. How could they be more mindful in that moment? That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'd say they're already being very mindful because they're aware of what's happening in the mind body. So they're aware of those thoughts are going through their mind. It depends on how we relate to those thoughts. So if we now relate to those thoughts that what are other people thinking? They're going to be thinking I'm hopeless or something or whatever. Then your relationship to the thoughts that are going through your mind is one where you're heading down the negative spiral. If you're bringing that mindfulness approach to this situation, one is that this young person's already mindful because they're aware of what's happening with their thoughts and their body, but their relation to it is this: there's those thoughts. So when I walk into these situations, which are quite stressful because people are looking at me, and this is quite a stressful situation for all of us as human beings when we're standing in front of people and people are looking at us. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to feel anxious, you're going to feel worried. But how you relate to what's going on in your mind body determines what follows. So if you kind of begin to relate, here's those thoughts again, those negative thoughts, they're coming up and they're kind of, what will other people think of me? I know those thoughts, they're going to take me down a loop. And of course, my heart rate's gone up and I feel a little bit nausea in my tummy. That's what happens when the brain goes into a threat state. So I know I'm feeling a bit threatened here because I'm actually walking to a classroom where there's 40 people looking at me. Then most human beings are going to experience this. So I know what's happening in my body. It's starting to get very anxious. My heart rate's gone up. I know my thoughts now are going to go more towards the negative. And if I begin to personalize them as facts, that something's wrong and I am weird in some kind of way, then I'm going to go down the spiral. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just drop my attention into my feet. I'm going to ground my mind body, take a deep breath like you've just done, Joe, slowly exhale, and then walk to my chair. sit down. You're still going to feel the ripplings of all of this, but I know that will settle. So can you see that kind of awareness of what happens in the brain, the mind, the body changes potentially our perception to what's going on? Knowing that this is a universal state of brain, body, mind, rather than, oh my God, Jerry, this is something that only happens to you. And so people must think I'm really weird. I am weird. This is hopeless.
Yeah, no, definitely, without a doubt. And I can relate to that. You know, when I first went to therapy and someone told me about cognitive distortions and negative thinking errors, and they all had a name, and it was catastrophizing, it was black and white thinking, it was mind reading. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? What, other people think this? There's been books. What? Ah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for making me feel so much better, because I just thought I was this weirdo that was having all these thoughts. So what was really nice about what you said is the awareness of it, but also when you're experiencing it, almost being a little bit of a coach to yourself.
Yeah. And what you're touching on there. So we talked about the first skills that we're learning, which is attention. Can you remember that, about anchoring with the body and the breath and so on?
Yeah.
And then what you're talking about being a coach to yourself is that second step, which is one of the key therapeutic change mechanisms in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is called metacognitive awareness. Okay. So that simply means the capacity to be able to step back from the experience that you're experiencing in the mind body, and begin to step back from and to see it happening. And then if you're able to step back and to see it happening, it means to say you've got a little bit of distance from it. So rather than being caught up in it and carried away like that into the spiraling effect, you've now been able to create a little bit of distance. So you can step back. So I can see what's happening in the body, the mind, the brain here. And now with this little bit of step back, this little bit of gap between the stimulus and the response, I can now begin to make some choices here. How do I respond to this situation? What's going to be most supportive and skillful for me right now? So that's the metacognitive awareness. That's the step back, or sometimes it's referred to as decentering. And this is the second skill from attention to metacognitive awareness that we're learning on this program. Stepping back, becoming that, let's say, the coach to the self, based on not just out of nothing, but a coach that has some real skills, practices, and some understanding of the processes that are happening, so that you're an equipped coach. So now you can make some skillful choices. How do I respond to this?
Interestingly, you use these techniques, Jerry, to train high performance athletes and creatives. There'll be a lot of people going, hang on a minute. So what? Sports people use these techniques. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a story or an experience of someone you've trained and how they've used it for a particular sport or a particular industry?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is historically is training that's been very much part of the North American basketball squads from the 90s. So we're looking at the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, etc. You know, they've been working with this for years. And the thing is, these teams and also, you know, other industries and organizations spend money training their personnel to deliver high performance. And these organizations are not going to be funding some woo-woo stuff. So they're going to be funding and supporting something that actually brings a marginal effect for their people in a high performance situation. And as I said, this is nothing new in terms of things that might be more familiar with us. So that's just an example of the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, but you're seeing it kind of coming into sort of high performance sport here in the UK as well. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Even just those simple breathing exercises. I don't know if you're into your football. I'm not a massive football fan, but I always get involved with the Euros, watching the women's football at the moment. Absolutely obsessed with it, loving it. Always get behind England when they're playing any sport. But I don't know if you remember in the last Euros, England actually scored all their penalties. And they said the reason was because Declan Rice the night before, he was taking them all through these breathing exercises. And if you look, if you look at each of them, just before they took their penalty, each of them just did that whole, and that was a difference between missing it and scoring every time. So like you say, it's these little marginal gains. I guess with regards to directing traffic towards the study or getting more people to be aware of the Attend study, I mean, are you looking for more recruits? If there's anyone out there going, parents and young people going, this sounds amazing, I want to be a part of this. Is there still spaces? Where do people go?
So we're running across the country in 6 sites, face-to-face groups. So those are in Devon, in Cambridge and Peterborough, in London, in Sussex, in Oxford and in Nottingham. But we also run a remote group as well. So that means anyone from the UK can join as well. Our only requirement, well, there's lots of requirements, but the main requirement for the remote group is that you do need to have an NHS GP. So it can't be from someone outside of the country, basically. You've got to have an NHS GP. The way you can get in touch is we've got a website, which we can put the address up. But if you just search Attend Mindfulness Cambridge, you'll find it anyway. There's more information on there about the study and what's involved. And then there's a little link that says, want to find out more or want to get in touch. You can put your details in there, and then what will happen is one of the researchers will send you more information and we'll have a chat to you on the phone to see if it's something you'd be interested in, explaining all about the randomization and that why we do that, why we don't just give everybody the MAC, because we don't know if it's effective at the moment. So that's what we're trying to find out. And what's involved, so what we'd be asking from you. If you're still interested, then you meet with the researcher for a more in-depth chat, which will last about an hour. And then we ask you to if you're willing to do it, really.
Nice. And is this on the basis of it must be young person and parent or carer? So parent and carer were like, I ain't doing that. And the young person was, I really want to do it. Can the young person just come through on their own?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the young people are the people we're recruiting. So they're the people we're most interested in. Right. So parents can't do it without a young person. But if a young person wants to do it, the parent is invited, and it's up to the parent whether or not they do it. I should probably give you a brief overview of what are the kind of people that we think this is most effective for. So it's young people between 15 and 18. They have to be experiencing some form of low mood. And we have questionnaires that we do that with. So it's for people who are still struggling with their mental health at the moment. But they also have to have had at least one treatment before. Now, that treatment could be something like cognitive behavioral therapy. It could be school counselling. So it doesn't have to be treatment from, for example, an NHS service. But we know that with some mental health, actually, some of the earlier treatments can be really effective. And MAC is what we call a second line treatment. And all we mean by that is it's probably more effective for people who've already tried something else. And that might have helped a bit, or it might not have helped at all, or they might have got better and then they've got worse again. So those are the people that we're really looking to take part and Attend, who would be eligible to take part. There are a few people that it's not suitable for. So if somebody is currently experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, then that wouldn't be, we don't think sitting in a skills-based environment and thinking on your thoughts is helpful. We know, in fact, that can be harmful. That's something that our researchers check in with all of the young people too. And also people who have got real problems with an eating disorder or with very significant self-harm and very significant suicidal thoughts. So things like feeling like life's not worth living and some self-harm as well is actually really common in low mood, especially in adolescence. So it's not that if you are self-harming, you wouldn't be suitable, but if it's to a point where you really need clinical help, so you're actually seeing a psychiatrist maybe for that, then again, sitting in a room full of people thinking about your body is probably not the best place for you. But we go through all of that with people as well. So the first thing is just get in touch with us and we'll be able to see if it's the right thing for you.
Thank you very much. And what about people that are on medication?
Yep, that's absolutely fine. So Previous medication would also count as a treatment as well. So it may be that you've been waiting for something through CAMS, for example, and you actually haven't had any talking treatments yet. But if you've been on an antidepressant, then that counts as having tried a treatment previously.
Are you still looking for recruits for the study?
Yeah, we are. So we are still looking for over 300 people. So we've still got a lot of spaces left. So we're still actively looking for lots of people. And we will be for at least the rest of this year and probably into next year as well. No, we will be into next year. Yeah. So there's plenty of time to get in touch, really.
Brilliant. I'm just giving it that 2-3 second pause just to make sure that I don't interrupt. There we go. I think I'm all right now. Sorry. I have a tendency to do it as well. No. I do it all the time. That's why, like, in my head, I'm like, just shut up until they finish speaking.
Actually, Joe, what might be worth adding is the practices and the exercises on the program are good fun. There's some really enjoyable programs. Often the practices are shorter, and the exercises that we do, which are all relevant to learning mindfulness-based cognitive skills, the exercises we do are fun. They're enjoyable.
Nice. Well, I'm going to hold you to that, Jerry, because in a minute, if you wouldn't mind finishing us off with what we have a feature on Anxiety Uncovered called the top takeaway of the week, whereby we end on something practical that anyone can take away with them to go try straight away. But before that, is there not an incentive as well, like I saw £60 somewhere floating around?
Yeah, that's true. So in order to sort of say thank you for taking part and for giving us the time, we kind of give an incentive each time the questionnaires are filled out, because we know it's a bit dull filling out questionnaires, but it's a really important part of our study. So every time you do one of the bigger questionnaires, we offer £15. And then if at the end of the year you've done most of the fortnightly ones, you also get £15. So in total, it's £60 for you. And if your parents are taking part, £60 for them as well.
So before we go, Jerry, would you mind wrapping us up with a takeaway, something that we can all practice, maybe with you as a guide?
So we're going to do 5 steps, and we can either have the eyes open or eyes closed for the first couple. And I'm bringing it as steps rather than just one practice, because each step you can take on its own, and you can practice at any point in your daily life, in everyday life. So let's begin with step 1, which is the body. And just very gently and very deliberately shift your attention into your feet making contact with the ground. So bringing full attention to the left and the right foot making contact with the ground. Notice the left foot making contact with the ground. And then gently shift the attention across to the right foot and notice the right foot making contact with the ground. So both feet making contact with the ground. And then just gently letting go of the feet and moving the attention up through the legs. And bring full attention now to the left and the right hand. So noticing the left and the right hand. And notice the temperature of the left hand. Is it warm? Is it cool? Or is it a mixture of temperatures? And then gently let go of the left hand and bring full attention to the right hand. And notice the temperature of the right hand. Is it warm? Is it cool? Or is it a mixture of temperatures? And then bring into our field of awareness both the left and the right hand. And just out of curiosity, is the left hand and the right hand the same temperature, or are they different? And now we're going to move to the breath. So just inviting you to bring full attention to the nostrils. And if the nostrils are clear, we're going to take 1 or 2 breaths in through the nose and down into the tummy, on the in-breath, and then we're gently releasing the out-breath from the tummy all the way back up and out through the nose. And if we can, just extend the out-breath so it's slightly longer than the in-breath. So breathing in through the nose when you're ready, fully into the tummy, allowing it to extend, and then gently releasing the out-breath all the way from the tummy, out through the nose, just making it slightly longer than the in-breath. Let's go for one more. Breathing in through the nose, and then gently releasing the out-breath and making it slightly longer. Okay, let's let go of the breath, and if it's okay, if the eyes are closed, just gently opening the eyes. And here we're coming to seeing. So we're bringing a mindfulness to seeing, and I'm going to invite you to bring attention very deliberately to one object in the space that you're sat in or that you're in at this moment. Bring your vision or seeing to one object. So look at this one object and notice the color and the colors of this object. What are we aware of? What are we noticing about the color and the colors of this object that we're seeing? And then gently letting go of this object that we are looking at and seeing, and very deliberately now shifting the attention from the eyes of seeing, we're seeing, and moving our attention now to the ears. And if you like, you can close the eyes and becoming fully aware of the sounds that are in the space or outside of the space that we are sitting in this moment, or we're currently in. So what's the sounds? Or is it silent? Sounds or silence? What's being experienced right now? And then gently letting go of hearing sounds, and let's very deliberately shift our attention back to where we began with the body and moving our attention fully into the left and the right foot. So noticing both feet, making contact with whatever the feet are resting on, what's supporting the feet. Notice that physical sensation of contact of the left and the right foot. So gently opening the eyes as they're closed. And then step 5 is really simply bringing full awareness to whatever activity you're engaged in during today. And maybe say for 60 seconds today, in an activity that brings some enjoyment or pleasure, just for that 60 seconds, practice bringing full attention and awareness to experiencing it as you're experiencing it, whether it's through what you are seeing, what you are hearing, what you're touching, maybe a smell, maybe a taste. Bring full awareness for that 60 seconds. And if you notice the mind wandering during that 60 seconds, notice, the mind's wandered, and then gently bring it back to that activity that you're participating in so you can fully engage with it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jerry. That was awesome. So there you have it. Attend is proving what families already know. When one person's struggling with anxiety or depression, everyone feels it, which is exactly why the solution needs to involve everyone too. So if you're 15 to 18, dealing with low mood and therapy hasn't quite worked, this family approach could be your breakthrough. Check out the show notes for all the details. And as a parent myself, this has really made me reflect. This isn't about fixing our children. It's about everyone getting the same toolkit and trying it out together. And I'm definitely going to be trying Jerry's mind training practice with my own kids. And I'd love to hear how you get on too. Next week, we're tackling something so many of you have asked about: social anxiety and school avoidance. I'm chatting with Daisy, who went from literally hiding in school toilets not being able to come into my Anxiety Uncovered workshop because she was told she might have to introduce herself and say her name, to becoming head girl. Trust me, you don't want to miss Daisy's story and the practical tips she took to get there. If you know someone who'd benefit from this episode or the show, please share it with them. It really does help spread the word and help as many people as possible. And as someone a lot wiser than me once said, if someone else blows your trumpet, the sound travels twice as far. Until next time, my friends, take care. I'll see you inside. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Anxiety Uncovered. Be sure to stay tuned for future episodes and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed the show and you think others would too, I'd be really grateful if you could recommend it and we can grow this community together. To get in touch or follow on social media, check out the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have ideas for future episodes or topics related to anxiety that you'd like to learn more about, please get in touch and I'll dedicate those episodes to you. If you need help right now, please speak up, even if it feels hard. Talk to a trusted adult, friend, or family member. It took me just 20 seconds of insane courage to go to the doctor and ask for help after putting it off for many years, and it honestly saved my life. For additional support, consider free online resources like Anxiety UK, which offers confidential help, or Shout, SHOUT, a free 24/7 text service for anyone in the UK who's struggling. And if you're outside the UK, I highly recommend the website adda.org. I'm your host, Joe Rowntree. It's been a pleasure. And until next time, big love, Godspeed, and Amor Fati.